Hey folks, Ben here with a quick note about this episode. We recorded this one in early May, and while we were aware the movie we're talking about this week dealt with some heavy themes, we didn't have any idea of how close to home its depiction of a heavily militarized police presence in Los Angeles would come to be. This episode's coming out right after the National Guard was deployed to LA in response to protests over ICE raids. Further protests have occurred in LA and throughout the United States as part of the No Kings movement. While we talk about the 1992 Los Angeles uprising and Black Lives Matter protests in this episode proper, it felt wrong to not mention current events given the proximity to this episode's release. If you're interested in learning more about the No Kings movement, check out nokings.org and check out the American Civil Liberties Union for more information on other civil rights action. Now, back to the show. Hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to Coffee Kurosawa, the friendly film crit podcast. I'm your friendly film fanatic, Ben Filipkowski.
And I am Farrah Sarpkaya, a person who loves film, but in a super chill, I'm pretty sure I played this as a video game featuring Keanu Reeves recently, sort of way.
And today we are taking a closer look at Catherine Bigelow's 1995 tech noir thriller Strange Days, with Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Vincent D'Onofrio, Michael Wincott, Juliette Lewis, and Tom Sizemore. Before we get started, we wanted to flag that this film contains graphic depictions of sexual assault. We are going to talk about these depictions in brief, but we will heavily flag when we are getting into this discussion so that you can skip ahead, and we will of course put timestamps around that discussion in the episode description as well. Now, imagine, if you will, the not-too-distant future of December 31st, 1999. That's right, it's the turn of the century, baby, and people just want to party. Even in the midst of heightened racial tension, rising crime rates, and an increasingly militarized and aggressive police presence. Fiennes plays cop-turned-black market filmmaker Lenny Nero. Lenny's subject of choice? Dreams. Using illicit technology, superconducting quantum interference devices, or squids, Lenny and others are able to capture the memories of physical sensations of their subjects, provided those subjects are wearing these funky cyberpunk hairnets. The videos they make are commonly called playback. Of course, Lenny has standards. He doesn't deal in blackball vids, which are gruesome snuff films capturing the squid wearers' last moments before they die. Lenny is trying to win back his ex, Faith, a successful rock star now managed by the shady mogul Philo Gant. He recruits his friend Mace, played by Angela Bassett, to chauffeur him around as he tries to sell his playback and win back the woman who doesn't want him anymore. Mace obviously cares for Lenny, but disapproves of his work and reluctantly plays taxi driver for him. Elsewhere, crooked cops chase an old friend of Lenny's. Gant's biggest client, Jericho 1, has been killed by unknown parties, and a killer with a penchant for gruesome playback vids is on the loose. Lenny and Mace get pulled deeper into the underbelly of LA in search of answers, and all around them, the powder keg of the city seems ready to blow. I think that's probably a decent enough write-up about how this movie kicks off and kind of what it deals with. So we'll obviously be talking extensively about the plot. As a result, if you haven't seen this movie yet, please go check it out. You can currently find it streaming in Canada on the Criterion channel, but of course, you can find a physical copy. I'll always recommend that. Farrah, what'd you think of Strange Days?
I mean, it was cool as heck. I immediately was like, oh, I've played this video game before. It also made me remember how cool the TTRPG is to play, but there's some clunky combat that makes it less than ideal. The movie itself, though, had everything I want out of a noir mystery. Gritty streets, political strife, dirty cops, a compelling, air quotes, hero, drowning in his own melancholy, a beautiful dame or two. It also made me hella nostalgic for the 90s and those chonky mobile phones that you could carry around in a briefcase. You'd warned me about the assault themes in this film, but I didn't actually realize the extent of it, so I definitely had to pause and walk away for a little bit. Despite that, I was kind of impressed that it was given the gravity that it deserved. And I had meant to watch it twice, but I couldn't. Not because the film as a whole wasn't excellent, but because those scenes were really hard to watch. Not in the same way something like Saw is gruesome, right? But all of that emotional weight in those moments, for sure. All that aside, I really enjoyed it. The writing and acting are fantastic. The set design and costuming and stunts were so good. And I remember where I was the eve of December 31st, 1999. I'm old enough for that. And all of the weirdness around Y2K. So I really loved how they built the, quote unquote distant future of 1999 from 1995 when the film was made to be this really weird analog digital society, and how they really wove so many social issues into such a tight story without going kind of overboard on the world building and stuff like that. So with that in mind, we're going to kick off and talk about the genre itself because, as I mentioned, very film noir, right? You got that gritty streets, you got that disgraced cop on the beat, sort of. He's a drug dealer, quote unquote, right? Because the squid vids are kind of very much framed as a drug from, the addiction perspective to people pushing this new thing in the streets and so on. But one thing that you kind of spoke to when we were chatting pre-record is the fact that it doesn't really feel that much like a sci-fi, even though it is a very, again, heavy air quotes, futuristic film. So talk to me about the way this film approaches noir, sci-fi, genre in general.
Yeah, I think so. In your summary there, in your thoughts there, you're talking about a game. The game that you're talking about is Cyberpunk, which is a like a tabletop RPG, pen and paper role playing game that I think was published in the late '80s originally, just called Cyberpunk, and there have been subsequent editions of it. I think the current edition is called Cyberpunk Red, but there's a major video game that came out a couple of years back called Cyberpunk 2077. And I think it's really important to note that this game is named after this subgenre of science fiction, which is so heavily inspired by film noir. But talking about film noir and genre and cyberpunk, I think it kind of helps to have some basic definitions around cyberpunk. So really quickly, it's a genre. It's not really monolithic. The best known work in the genre is probably Cyberpunk 2077 right now, but I would really want to point out that all these things are really drawing so heavily from the novels that William Gibson wrote in the mid 80s, early 90s. Asterisk, because I think that Neuromancer, which is the seminal cyberpunk novel, kind of comes out maybe 79. I'd have to double check when it was published. And generally, cyberpunk is fiction that concerns the juxtaposition of high tech with low life. So that's the really in a nutshell way to look at it, is that it's this crazy technology that's being employed by the seedier side of society. So the criminals or the people trying to make ends meet. It's not really utopian. It is explicitly dystopian. It is about the collapse of societal norms and rot in society in so many ways. That doesn't mean it's post-apocalyptic. It's just this idea of a very grim future, often controlled by corporate interests and other things. And yeah, that's all I'll get into on that, because I will veer off into a crazy digression on corporate interests and technology in the modern day and what that might mean. But it shares a lot of DNA with film noir and hard-boiled detective stories. And I think when you have that really explicit, we're doing a film noir in a cyberpunk setting, people will sometimes call that tech noir. I think this kind of falls into that to some extent, because it's kind of there is this semi-futuristic technology, and we kind of examine to some extent its impacts on the world that we are kind of privy to in this movie. But the technology is not necessarily the primary focus. It's more like a plot device to get the story moving, and kind of how that unfolds. So I think this is a really cool movie in terms of I was watching this and couldn't help but think that this is just a standard film noir plot. You've got the detective, or the reluctant detective in the case of Lenny, who is explicitly an ex cop on. I think you were
Yes,
calling it
Vice
a
Cop.
vice cop.
Yeah.
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 So he is like he knows how to investigate stuff. He knows how to do all this stuff, and he's just choosing not to do that because his heart was broken by his lost love, who's Faith, who's now this rock star with the shady club music impresario. You know, and he's got the Mace is his kind of chauffeur and bodyguard because that is explicitly her job. She
Yeah.
shuttles around VIPs. She knows how to handle tough situations and really good behind a wheel, really good kicking ass, taking names, but also very like morally upstanding. Wants Lenny to kind of get out of dealing playback is a phrase that is said numerous times in this movie. I think the word tapehead also comes up for like people who are borderline
Yeah.
addicted to playback. So just like all these great like crunchy little terms that build the world. I think I don't know. This is such a film noir to me.
I mean, if we look at like the actual definition of film noir, which really focuses on that pessimism, that fatalism, and like menace,
Hmm.
is what Google tells me is the specific flags. Often folks think of film noir of like the Humphrey Bogarts, the black and whites, the Doghouse Rileys, the that kind of
Yeah,
detective work. Even like Batman, right,
yeah,
has a lot of film noir in it, because DC has that more slant towards like the grittiness and whatnot. So, I mean, I think you're not wrong in that. But at the same time, if we're looking at cyberpunk as its own kind of thing, it's distinctly pushing not the cool cyberpunk of the, like, I don't know. There are many a video game that I suddenly have never played any video games ever in my life. But, like, there's a plethora of things that are like, oh, what if this one thing had changed? And then that
hmm
turns into this world. But they really sidestep that really nicely. And as they're building kind of the world that we are existing in, where, yeah, there's this cool new technology, but A, it's flagged as very new, so it really hasn't had the chance to impact the world just yet.
hmm
And it is explicitly called out as military tech
hmm
that has just entered like the ecosystem of the everyday.
hmm
Um I think it makes a lot of sense that this is right as the world is shifting from film noir into cyberpunk. So you don't have that grip of sci-fi of looking at the tech too much. It is very much focused on the mystery, to your point,
yeah,
and doesn't really veer too deeply into the morality of the tech itself so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So many cyberpunk uh, stories kind of wind up being concerned with like how technology affects human existence. Like there's a lot of kind of navel gazing around that. I think, and Neuromancer and William Gibson's novels in particular tend to uh, a real pessimistic view of the benefits of this technology. I think also like you get, and explicitly like the cyberpunk video game series is very much about how like, oh yeah, you can augment and enhance yourself with all this cool technology, and you become kind of post-human, but then all the cybernetics, they eat your soul, and you might go
Yeah.
crazy because you're too much of a machine. Um,
Yeah.
so this really doesn't deal with a lot of that, and like there's no. I think like they talk about like yeah you jack into the video, but like that really
Yeah.
just means that you put the mini disc in the mini disc player and hit play. um, like there's
Yeah.
no real like it's not invasive if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no need for like oh yeah you have a USB port in your head now. It's like you
Right.
wear
Yeah.
like a little hairnet
Mm-hmm.
basically, and the electrodes communicate this
Yeah.
signal to your cerebral cortex, and that's how you experience this thing in real time.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just such a weird, wonderful little like messy genre movie in so many ways because it's not clearly film noir, it's not
Mm-hmm.
clearly sci-fi. It's kind of a bit of this and a bit of that, and
Yeah.
it's not really concerned with like what that all means. I think. and I really enjoy it as a result.
I, I I would kind of disagree that it doesn't concern itself with what it means, because there are points where we have like Lenny is a little addicted, right? It's a
Mhm.
drug. That is his drug, replaying his memories of faith over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We have the quote unquote overdosing that happens a couple of times in the film, right? Where someone's frontal lobes are just goop now,
Yeah.
because it has been turned into a weapon. Of course, it was a military thing, so, and also we've got Mace really pushing hard on Lenny to say, hey man, you've got a problem.
Mhm.
You can do better than this. You can be better than this. Like, let me help you. You can't. What's the line? Memories were made to be forgotten. That's how they were designed or something.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it starts to touch on looking ahead at how this could be very damaging, but it doesn't preoccupy itself with it. And that makes it a lot more real to me, that it's not just like, I think that the navel gazing is the word that you used,
Yeah.
of just like staring at this one tech and be like, we're going to concern ourselves with the tech. No, that's just there. That's just a thing we have to, contend with. Let's focus on the emotional impact of reliving the memories of other people, being caught in this trap of, well, I could just remember the same things that made me happy and over and over and over again, but that means I'm not experiencing new life for myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's really interesting.
For sure. That's a good point. The specific quote that Mace has is, just had it here. Yeah, memories are meant to fade. They're designed that way for a reason. And yeah, I would argue though that Lenny's addiction is not necessarily to playback. It is to his memories. Like he's really stuck
Yeah.
living in the past.
Fair.
And but ironically, he also has that interaction with Faith. And she says, there's another direct quote, one of the ways movies are still better than playback? The music comes up, there's credits, and you always know when it's over.
Yes.
So, like, and in this moment, she's explicitly telling him, like, move on, like, let go, and please stop bothering me. Which is kind of funny given the way the plot unfolds and what her overall plan is. But yeah, I think like, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of like kind of the Venn diagram of like film noir and cyberpunk and all the genre fiction in this is so, the overlap is so extensive. I think there is a bit of that like concern over like societal collapse, but I think a lot of that is also brought on. It's more like the Y2K paranoia that I think you've already touched on a little bit, versus like it's not the technology causing this. It's just everyone's super paranoid and anxious about the turn of the century and what that means, the turn of the millennium. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here, and none of it's super clean, but that makes it fun.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I do wonder if I'm going to take a quick 30 seconds to just be like, for those of you that don't remember Y2K or haven't really read up about it much, because I forget that was a long time ago. Basically, we thought that all of the computers were going to stop working because someone hadn't properly coded something. And so on 2000 instead of 1999, everything would collapse. Banks would collapse. Every system that we'd built on technology would collapse. And it would be basically the end of the world. Now, I won't belabor the point of how that was mitigated and or overplayed, but that's kind of the vibe. And I think with this, because they really took that Y2K panic around technology generally, it really, I don't even want to say downplayed, but it really brought to life that there was a specific technology that was a problem, but it's just technology general that's like a which puts it more squarely again, as you pointed out, in the film noir genre of kind of just broad societal feelings rather than like a specific tech, which is, closer to that sci-fi cyberpunk extreme.
Yeah, that overall pessimism that
Mm-hmm.
is present in film noir versus like an explicit like this is the thing causing the
Yeah,
problem. They kind of
exactly.
they start off with like this technology is bad, but it's not the cause of all these worries and anxieties. There's plenty of other
Yeah.
stuff going on. Like I touched on it in the summary, but like every time the characters are driving through LA, it's like a war zone.
Yes.
Like the police are fully militarized. I think the National Guard are out in a lot
Yeah.
of sequences, and
Yeah, there's tanks everywhere.
yeah,
Like,
APCs and tanks, and yet everyone's well. Is everyone really hyped up to party for the new year, or are they there to riot for the new year? Like it's kind of
I
unclear.
mean, yes,
But all of the
to
above.
both.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because like what kicks off the whole film, right, is the murder of a rapper and black activist, right?
Hmm.
And so while there are a lot of people partying Times Square style, there are also a lot of tensions around, this murder.
Yeah.
Um, and so we do get the sense, and I think this is familiar to anybody listening to this who is of an appropriate age to listen to this podcast, would remember at least one instance of very strong racial tensions, either here in Canada or in the U.S. or in any of the world, blanket statement, anywhere in the world, but particularly here in North America,
Hmm.
we have a lot of tensions with law enforcement, we'll say. And yeah, I think when society is changing so heavily, we often get that, like, I don't know, are we rioting or are we partying? Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and watching this now, 30
Mhm.
years on, like 30 years from release, I should say. Um, it's interesting to me that this came out in 95 and concerns like increased, civil tension within
Mhm.
LA. And it's, film, it's released, I think, 3 years after the 1992 LA riots and
Mhm.
all that unrest that were the result of, triggered in large part by the acquittal of LAPD officers and the death of Rodney King,
Mhm.
um, and sparked like massive. Like I'm certain for people watching this movie, there a lot of that would still be relatively fresh in their minds. Like the imagery is
Yeah.
not wildly different from what they might have seen in the news.
Mhm.
But then for us now, I think the touch point for us now would be so many things around like the Black Lives Matter movement, and in particular,
Yeah.
like so many instances of African Americans and other people of color being, assaulted or victimized in some ways by figures of authority, whether that is explicitly the police or uh, white people in positions of power and abusing that
Yeah.
power. So
Mhm.
like the fact that there is kind of almost two plots at play here and they get intertwined, and one of them is explicitly the um, Iris has the video of Jericho 1 being murdered by the LAPD. That
Mhm.
is like by these two officers, I should say, because in the end, the kind of like ray of light and beacon of hope is the commissioner of police winds up being a good man who does the right thing. Um,
Yeah.
but like that kind of plot winds up intertwined with the the serial killer sort of thing, where like and as I think about it, it is kind of surreal that there are these two plots that are so different, but they get like
Mhm.
intertwined with one another to
Yeah.
the point where like a character I think explicitly says like, "Boy, it's crazy that this happened. Like what?" Like that really threw a wrench in things in a
Yeah.
good way for me, because I think the character in question is the killer. Is like, yeah, those
Yes.
cops
Yeah.
showing up really saved my bacon because I was able to get away
Yeah.
with a lot more. Uh,
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah. It's a it's a rough look at how things change and also how things often stay the same if we don't address the root problems of so many things. But I do find it interesting that we actually meet the commissioner early on because he's the one that fired Lenny in the first place, basically. And he's just like, oh, you're scum, basically, at a door. He's like, no, I'm just picking up my client. Don't worry about me. And he walks away. And so we originally get the impression that this commissioner is kind of a piece of trash. Like, he is pretty, like, cliche, what you would imagine is, like, quote-unquote senior cop boss guy that kind of runs it old school, a little bit like a racket sort of thing. And he's got that very, very film noir, again, going back to that genre vibe of, is he crooked? Maybe. And then Angela Bassett's character, Mace, trusts enough this man to bring him this mini disc, which is the brain dance if you're a Cyberpunk 2077 player.
Yeah.
The video.
Yeah.
And leave it with him. And she trusts him enough to do that, which is truly wild. And it nets out good.
It does.
Good thing that she did.
But she also trusts him because Lenny vouches for him in that last moment. Like, Lenny has that choice where it's like he can either give that video to Mace, or he can, like, I can't remember what his other option is.
To bring it to what's his name? Faith's manager.
Philo.
It's not Pablo.
Gant?
Yeah.
Philo Gant.
Like
so he has, like, he can either basically, like, put himself first, or, you know, do the right thing, and he chooses to do the right thing. And then, like, when the chips are down, he does vouch for the commissioner.
Yes.
And then that is, like, the thing that gives Mace some hope. And then the commissioner seemingly dismisses all of this, which then she's done and kind of winds up, I wouldn't say taking justice into her own hands, but she winds up in that situation where, like, she's cornered by the crooked cops, played by Vincent D'Onofrio and William Fichtner. Both
they do such a good job.
Both great at playing real slimy characters, real heels.
Yeah.
It's weird seeing Vincent D'Onofrio not shout out the name Vanessa in a Marvel property, but it's great. He's really good, really talented actor.
Oh, so good.
And then that entire ending sequence is really, like, heightened in such a way where that whole confrontation between Mace, the cops, and then the other cops, and then the commissioner showing up in the nick of time, kind of playing concurrently with a riot seeming to break out around them in, it's not Times Square, but, you know, it's the
LA equivalent.
The LA equivalent of Times Square. Meanwhile, Lenny is in a knife fight with his former best friend on, like, the high-rise penthouse apartment. And what a weird, this movie's weird.
Yes, it sure is.
But I love it.
I do feel like this is another trigger warning that I should add to the text of this episode, is that there is a scene where Angela Bassett's character is the victim of some very heavy police violence.
Yes.
And thus follows a horde of people in the crowd coming to her rescue, until such time as the commissioner comes and, like, pulls her out of it and pulls rank. And between that and what I think we'll probably start talking about soon with some of the other more difficult subject matter in this film, is they're not gratuitous about it. Like, the commissioner shouts, hey, get this woman some medical attention, because we've watched her being physically beaten. But when you pull back after the police disperse and we get kind of a closer up on her, we see a little blood on her forehead, but we don't see bruises. We don't see that she's been heavily, like, they don't visually flag that in the makeup and design. And, like, given how much care was given to the rest of this film, I think that was very clearly intentional. And I think one thing that you talked about before, we watched this was, hey, focus on perspective. And this is a really good place where I think the director made a very clear choice of, we don't need to see the physical manifestation of that. We can see the actions without being subject to it. And I really appreciate that about this movie a lot.
I think that's probably a good moment for us to segue into some of the more difficult subject matter. So for those of you at home, if this is not something that you want to listen to right now, completely understand. This is your kind of heads up that we're going to be talking about the depictions of sexual assault in this film. So I think we'll limit ourselves to
about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes.
But we will put exact timestamps in the show notes for you.
So, hit pause, fast forward, do what you got to do. We completely understand. That being said, the movie does depict first-person account of sexual assault. This is
by the perpetrator.
By the perpetrator,
specifically.
Yeah. And it is a pretty harrowing sequence, I would say, to watch. It really plays with perspective in a spooky, very unsettling way. And the nature of the Squid videos is that it's all first person, and there's a strange digital distortion to some of it that kind of lends a heightened sense of tension to these sequences, I would say. They're a little surreal. I wouldn't say dreamlike. They're almost like more real than real in some ways. They're uncomfortable. Even when they are benign, they're a little uncomfortable to watch. There's a kind of a sense that we are always watching something we were not meant to watch, I think, is something that is kind of sticking out to me now, and particularly in this sequence.
Absolutely.
So I don't think we need to go into too much detail about the actual depiction of things. Suffice to say that the perpetrator here is also uses another Squid device so that the victim has to experience his perspective as well as her own sensations. It's extremely dark.
I think the sensations part is particularly interesting, and this is kind of one of the things I wanted to touch on, because the squids, when you wear it and you experience it, you are not just experiencing the visual, but you are experiencing what that person is feeling and sensing and all these things. And there is a casting the viewer, i.e. the viewers of the film, but also the viewers of the squid, because later Lenny watches it, and so do a few other folks, where on the one hand, right, we are this first-person perpetrator experiencing this thing, and we get the impression that he is enjoying it, but we're not getting the same graphic visuals that so many other medias that portray sexual assault give. Not unlike the scene with Angela Bassett's character, Mace. And also understanding that he's feeling pleasure and then forcing her to feel pleasure is also then reflected back to us, as the audience who could stop watching but don't. And also Lenny, who wears the thing. And Ralph Fiennes, I think, did a really incredible job here showing that he is repulsed while he's watching it, but also feeling that physical sensation of sexual gratification, which is a trip. Because if you are not a victim of sexual assault, one thing that does come up oftentimes in the discourse is a person who experiences assault often still feels the physical markers of pleasure, if you will, even though it's not a mental thing. That's just how your body reacts to certain stimuli, right? And so this film forcing us to, we anonymize the person committing the crime because we don't see their face, but also we are experiencing with Lenny the disgust the acknowledgement that it is horrific is such a visceral creator of empathy,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is very interesting. And again, I think they contextualized this. So many people in so many other medias are like, oh, it's for the plot. We can do whatever they want. And that's some nonsense. But in this case, this is the exception to that rule of this actually really does create a really compelling story of empathy and perspective that I don't think a lot of folks would necessarily understand, particularly after seeing Fine's depiction of Lenny as he's watching it
Mm-hmm.
and his revulsion, literally throwing up
Yeah.
after experiencing it, but also miming the sexual, again, pleasure is the word I'm using, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a whole, I hesitate to call it play with some of these ideas, because I don't think that it's trying to be, I don't think,
Playful.
it's certainly not
Yeah.
trying to be playful, but like the idea of like play being like, we're going to experiment with some of these interesting ideas. I think it is making a big statement about like the role of like, of being like a passive viewer versus an active participant in the world around you, and kind of the notion of like, we've had, by this point in the movie, there have been some very leering first person video sections that Lenny has showcased. Like there's about as explicit as you can get in an R-rated movie, depictions of fully consensual sex, and then we are kind of hit with this, and
Yeah.
again, we have that opportunity to look away. Lenny has that opportunity to look away, but the movie's kind of saying something about the perspective of the character, of us as the viewer, and I think arguably even the role of like a camera in depicting anything like this. So
Yeah.
hits hard.
Yeah. It's interesting too that early on, one of the first interactions we get with Lenny is him watching a video of two women enjoying each other's company, legitimately enjoying each other's company. And then he watches it and he goes back to the women and he's like, actually, can you move your eyes a little slower? Can you do this? He's very much directing what they're doing. And then we get the portrayal of sexual assault where this other man is forcing a woman to do something she does not want to do.
Yeah.
And he is now being forced to, again, not forced because he could take it off at any point, but being forced to experience her feelings in that moment in a way that he was not, wanting to. And so that, like, the two sides of it is very interesting. And the fact that those are the two things that we get from Lenny and kind of the sex part of all of this. And yeah, it's rough. It's a rough scene.
I mean, I will fully admit I do what I can to fast forward through that scene when I watch this movie. And there is a second scene later on that is kind of built up to be similar. And then the kind of twist is that it is a consensual act. But yeah, it's certainly I can't really talk about this movie without talking about this particular sequence and its impact on the narrative and the ideas that it presents. I also think it's worth noting that, this is, again, a film directed by Catherine Bigelow, so she's bringing her perspective to these things. And I think that also says a lot about kind of the nature of how the film deploys gaze, in particular, the concept of like male gaze gets a lot of discussion in entertainment in general. And I think that the way that Bigelow directs this movie does play with that in some interesting ways. That kind of brings up ideas and themes that I wouldn't necessarily think of. So
yeah. I mean, I think we've probably. I want to make sure that we put a very clear cap on the discussion of the assault. Is there
100%.
anything else you kind of want to touch upon before we move into different parts of that perspective? For example, the the assault versus the consensual, sex tape, if you will.
Yeah, I think the only thing I will add about like this assault scene versus the more consensual scene is that I think the more consensual scene has more. It is certainly coded more. I'm not quite sure how to say what I'm trying to say. It is certainly, there are hints that it is, we're just seeing a role play versus an actual depiction of something. So that being said, Lenny's reaction is almost like he has to watch it because he's now concerned about Faith, and he needs, for his own sanity, needs to know that she is safe. So watches the whole thing, and that's how he learns that this is in fact a consensual act, which kicks off the big twist that Max is this
mastermind? Question mark.
Sort of. I mean, he's the killer for sure.
Yeah.
He's the killer. He's the perpetrator of so much of the film's violence. But yeah, it sets off the big twist that, in fact, Max is kind of just the muscle, and Faith has been engineering some of the stuff behind the scenes, and that it is all disconnected from the entire plot with the cops. By pure coincidence. So maybe that can be our cap off on that, and we can move into the other stuff. So that is
so amazing. So then, moving past all of that, let's talk about perspective and the female gaze and the male gaze.
Sure.
Because we have a lot of moments where Lenny is wheeling and dealing, being like, I can make your biggest fantasies come true. 1 girl, 2, and I'm like, that's it. That's all you got. That's my biggest fantasy. All right, but his peddling is so often focused around sex and very gratuitous looks at the female body and how beautiful and all these things. And then we get to see him using his videos of Faith, and they're all, don't get me wrong, there's some spicy material in there, but oftentimes it's also just, we're rollerblading on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
He's gazing at her face, at her lips while they're, enjoying each other's company and all these things. And the fact that his product is so hypersexual and his obsession is so far removed from that, even in those moments of intimacy, speaks a lot to me of what we have traditionally seen in media as the male gaze versus the female gaze. And that closer, more emotional view of relationships and love and sexuality versus these very triple X peep show situations.
Yeah. I think I love that you bring that up, because I think that Faith is, as a character, I think very heavily sexualized, and very much, I think, plays into that notion of the male gaze in how she's depicted and presented. And you get those moments of Lenny's watching the videos of his own memories, and it's, there is certainly that spicier element, as you're saying, but it winds up being a lot more wholesome than you think. And yeah, that is certainly interesting to me. And then you also get when he's trying to peddle his wares, he's making porn, he's a pornographer.
Yeah.
And I think he's talking to the guy who may or may not be a lawyer who's interested in pursuing a more hedonistic lifestyle. And I found the quote here. Lenny says, "See, I can get you what you want. I can get you anything. You just have to talk to me. You have to trust me. You can trust me because I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of the soul. I'm the magic man. Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it, you think it, you can have it." And so he has this he talks about all this stuff in very high-minded terms, but he's also very aware that most people just want, hot ladies or hot guys. That's That's all.
And you don't want to tarnish your wedding ring, I believe is the
Yeah.
phrase that he uses, because you're
Yeah.
not actually doing anything with these people.
Yeah.
Um,
He's selling a
yeah.
lifestyle in some ways. It's
Kind
really
of, yeah.
it's really funny.
Yeah, because he's like, yeah, guys like you really just want to be able to go let loose, rob a bank.
Mhm.
Like all these, like, be that, nefarious mobster type. But then go back to your wife and your
Yeah.
2-car garage and your 2.5 children, your golden retriever and all these things. And I think there's a really interesting subtext there around the commodification of underprivilege
Yeah.
that kind of persists throughout here. But like before I deviate us too much, on the note of faith, I found it so interesting, again, because they don't really change the world around them at all in light of this new tech for the most part. When he and Faith are in the memory, and Faith is prancing around, kind of flirting with him, there's also a cross on the wall, which was
Yeah.
really interesting. And I don't know what it was about that moment that I saw that, and I was like, is it heavy-handed that her name is Faith and there's a cross on the wall of their apartment together? I don't know. But it felt like the right amount of handed,
Yeah. Well, he's built her up as like saint-like
Yeah.
because of the memories and because of all this. And then it turns out she's basically been angling to get Gant out of the way through permanent brain damage.
Yep.
And has kind of willingly turned, maybe not a blind eye, but is kind of like pointedly not commenting on the fact that her actual boyfriend, Max, who was supposed to be Lenny's best friend, is, this awful human being just going around killing people. Yeah. Very on the nose that way. And I think contrasts so much with Mace as a character. Like, Mace, I don't think is... I don't mean to say that Mace is not a feminine character, but is not as traditionally feminine in this narrative or in how she is portrayed and costumed and done up the way that Faith might be. Mace wears a cool black suit for like most of the movie, and Mace is, like, Lenny's a former cop, cannot look after himself in a fight. Mace has to save his bacon, like, I don't know,
Multiple
like
times.
20 it feels like 20 times. It's probably not that many, but like they're running from the dirty cops, and well, Lenny's able to clock that these guys are cops. Like, Mace is the one to get them out of the situation. The her limo's on fire, so she drives it into the harbor to put out the fire. Then manages to retrieve her shotgun and bust them out, and like she's got it all together. She's also a mom. She's a single mother. Lenny was the cop who looked after her son when her ex-husband was arrested for murder. Killing someone in their own house while her son was present. So, like, she's always had a soft spot for Lenny, which becomes romantic, or is, I think, explicitly romantic throughout the movie, or like we are gradually led to understand that it is romantic. But she is like the protector. She is the muscle in the movie in so many ways, which is, I think, such a cool kind of shake up of what we would, I guess, would be more usually the expectation, I suppose. It's a bad way of saying it, but...
Well, I mean, she's a woman in a film noir movie.
Yeah.
And so you expect her to be...
the damsel.
The wilting wallflower, the damsel, exactly. The cops get her, and Lenny comes and saves the day. No. She's a boss and handles the whole thing very well from top to bottom. And she's shown to be a big community member. She's obviously, very involved in civil rights and so on, and is shown to be a very good mother. And throughout, as we see her memories, not through a brain dance disc, whatever, but through flashbacks. And I think that is a really interesting play with the tech because, she's the one that says, like, memories are meant to fade, but she has this very vivid recollection of that moment where she walked into her son's room and Lenny was there reading him a book, right? And the fact that those memories for her are still solid speak a lot to what she deems is important because she probably replays that in her head without the aid of anything else, whereas Lenny is so trapped in the past and he has to kind of consume these manufactured memories to not let them fade and thus not let him heal, right? Like, I'm sure many of the folks listening to this have had a rough breakup or two that they wish they could forget, or at the very least are glad that they can't necessarily remember every detail. Because, like, even in the best case scenario, you just now have a bunch of information about some person that you're never going to speak to again. That's totally useless. And you're just like, can I just dump that out? Can I just scoop that portion out and tuck it out the window? Like,
yeah. I think it's just interesting that she is so presented as, she winds up being like the moral center of the movie.
Yes.
Like, she wants to do what's right. She acknowledges that, like, the video of the cops killing Jericho 1 is like that. Like, she's very explicit in saying, like, this has to come out. Like, the truth has to come out. She is, very supportive and in some ways, like, nurturing of Lenny, trying to get him to do the right thing consistently. Killer performance, awesome character. Also gets the iconic moment in her, I think it's her apartment or Lenny's apartment. It's Lenny's apartment. And Lenny's, like, got the tapes in the box. And she's, like, had it up to here with him. She grabs him by the shirt collar and slams him up against the wall. And says, "This is your life right here, right now. It's real time, you hear me? Real time. Time to get real, not playback. You understand me?" And, like, she's smashed up his tapes. And Lenny's, like, broken at this moment. Like, his memories are literally destroyed. He slumps to the ground. Yeah. Did you notice what's behind him? There's a poster on the wall.
So. Is there?
Featuring a poster of pachyderms, of elephants. What do we know about elephants?
They never forget. That's so funny. Oh my God. Did not notice at all.
Yeah. So that moment is awesome. Just like kicks us right into the final act.
Yes.
What a fun little thing. I was reading that Catherine Bigelow attended a screening and was asked, like, was that deliberate? Like, the elephants there, what a great, like, metaphor. And she's like, I didn't notice that, and I need to talk to someone in the art department now. Like, that's it. She was like, I wish I thought of that.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, killer moment. That's also, fun fact, the source of the iconic Fatboy Slim song "Right Here, Right Now" is just that sample? of Angela Bassett saying "Right Here, Right Now" is the chorus of that song. Love it.
Amazing.
Peak 90s.
Yeah. The writing in this particular movie was so good. Like, there were so many excellent quips. There were so many excellent lines. The cast delivered it, like, so well. But, like, the timing of all of the everything was just so good without feeling over-engineered. And I love that.
So I think it's really interesting that you bring that up because I have a note here. I wrote down, this is a favorite of mine because of how weird, stylish, and dark it is. The performances walk this line between caricature and sincere, often turning on a dime. So there's this over-the-top element to the whole movie that kind of clicks with me. They say what are clearly meant to be gag lines with the utmost sincerity.
Yeah.
That bit before they head off to the New Year's party, I think it is, and Lenny's like, "Oh no," and Mace is like super concerned. What? And Lenny says, "This tie doesn't go with my shirt."
Yes.
It's so sincere. It's so goofy. Like, Lenny has so many random little lines that are
The
really out
Rolex
there.
gag?
The Rolex gag. The Rolex gag
he
is
hands off
good.
so many Rolexes, being like, "This is a bribe. Look at this fancy Rolex," and he just has a suitcase full of them.
Yeah. I love he tries to bribe the Gantz bodyguard, who's the ex-NFL linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a funny moment because like his friend gives him the like, oh, he used to play for the Rams, and you know, gives him like the rundown, and then when the guy's about to like beat up Lenny, he immediately just repeats all of that in the most flattering tone possible, which is deeply funny to me. Like he's just trying to save his own skin, and he's like, yeah, do you want my Rolex? I got a Rolex, and the guy's like, yeah, mine's real.
Oh.
And then later on the Rolex comes back again. It's like, here, you can take my Rolex. Like, just take it. Just let me go. And the guy says, is it impact resistant? And I says, yeah, I think so. Why? And immediately gets punched with the watch.
Just not the face.
Yeah.
Oh God. So good. I also just realized, because I've been thinking about this, because every time I see Lenny and like Ralph Fiennes, I'm just like, why is that name such a cop name? It's because of Law and Order, which premiered in 1990. And the gentleman that also played Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast played Lenny Briscoe. I feel like I need to know his name so I can say it because he was great. Jerry Orbach. There we go. I'm like, did you guys name him after Jerry Orbach? Because he had that vibe. He had a bit of a Lenny vibe, and I appreciate it.
But
anyway,
at the same time, Lenny Nero is such a like, there's some other like famous detective named Nero, I think. Nero Wolfe. Yes. Another iconic, eccentric fictional detective from the 30s, Nero Wolfe. Nice. Just good names in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, Mace is a nickname. Her full name is Loretta Mason, but everyone calls her Mace. Yeah.
She also sprays mace at an attacking dog at some point. And you're like, oh, did she get the nickname?
Yeah. She also has that sick roundhouse kick in slow motion, saving Lenny from the goons.
And an excellent thigh holster, which was some pretty fun costume design, because she goes full noir honeypot. Like, fully, she is at the noir honeypot of, I have already given the disc to the director, whatever, commissioner, and now she's being chased because they think she has it. And she's got the beautiful dress, her hair's looking beautiful, she's got the gun holster on the thigh, and she's just running. It's just like, yes, give me that trope. Give it to me.
Yeah. There's another bit that really stood out to me that I'm just blanking on right now.
Oh no.
When the reveal of her in the dress and she's done up with her hair done up, and Lenny's thing is like, he does like the weirdest compliment ever, where he's like, oh, you look good in that dress, Mace, and she's like, oh, well, thank you, and he says, I mean, better than I would, at least. Just like, what a weird thing to say. Like, clearly you have a crush on this woman and you're just refusing to admit it.
I mean, they're two best friends who are like, will they, won't they? You know, they're Ben and Rachel. They get together at the very end.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have been okay without the kiss at the end and just left it to be like, do they figure their stuff out? Maybe. You'll never know.
That's another good use of perspective, because I think we've talked about it on another episode. But like when you want to show romantic interest, you match the eye lines, like the same location, and they do that so well in that ending. And then the riot just magically stops. There's like a riot, and it starts and it magically stops. And then you see there's like a hippie girl who is on the APC making out with one of the National Guardsmen. And all that stuff about like, oh, end of the world, man, end of time, end of history, everything's been done. It does end on a really positive note. Like Lenny redeems himself somewhat. He's ditched to this lifestyle. and then the countdown becomes a count up as the clock keeps ticking.
Yep.
It's so nice.
So good. Well, that brings us to just about the end, I think.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you want to learn about something to do with movies, Ben, why is Strange Days the one to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I've already covered this, but if you wanted to find the source of the Fatboy Slim song right here, right now, you've got it. It does occur at about an hour and 43 minutes into the movie. On a more serious note, if you want a movie that is positively bursting at the seams with ideas and themes and, you know, narrative hooks about perspective, identity, truth, and so much more, like this movie, I wouldn't say is like neat and tidy in any ways, but that I think makes it all the more fun to dig into. Like there's something here if you want to kind of think some deep and not so deep thoughts about cool things on screen. This is the one to check out. But if you just want to check something out on a chill Friday night, Farrah, why Strange Days? Or maybe why not Strange Days?
I mean, I think yes, you would on a Friday night. It is emotionally gripping. The vibe is consistent all the way through without being repetitive. The writing is so good, so quippy, and you know, the acting is top notch. I continue to debate if I wish I'd looked up more specifically the trigger warnings when you warned me originally, but I'm not mad that I didn't, because the emotional weight of those things didn't really hit as gratuitous for the sake of gratuity. And I really appreciated that framing. So, yeah, I mean, I'd watch it on a Friday night. Just make sure that you have some time after to watch something cute, or like I did, go rip some stuff out of a garden for an hour or two to re-regulate your brain, because it is a lot, even if it is framed really, really well. And that's it. That's Strange Days. So you can find the podcast at Patreon as Coffee and Kurosawa, as well as Blue Sky as Coffee Kurosawa Pod, and on LinkedIn now, of all places. You can find me on Blue Sky, Substack, Letterboxd, and LinkedIn, I suppose, if you want to, as Farrah Sarpkaya, and at sarpkaya.ca, where I lend my voice as a voice actor. Ben, where can the people find you?
I'm on Blue Sky as at the Benjimon and on Letterboxd as at Benjimon. Yeah. I think that brings us to the end. So,
it sure does.
Folks, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this one as much as we did, and it got you thinking as much as it got us thinking. And tune in next time as we watch yet more movies.